and she's in his office. It looks like the Bob Newhart thing, and she's like, I'm here because I have a real problem. I'm afraid of being...
great to see so many youth here in our studio audience tonight. Our subject is substance abuse, the impact on community. Our speakers tonight will be Danny Dean, the Deputy Navajo Sheriff's Office, Linda Wilson, the Chief Deputy Probation Officer for Navajo County Probation, Gretchen Herndon, the Program Director of Change, and Vicki Solomon, the Executive Director of the Nexus Coalition. So the way that this is going to work is that each of our speakers will present. Then after the presentation, we will have a question. So feel free to send in your questions. Just so you know, there is like a 30-second delay if you're watching on Facebook or in the crowd. But you don't have to wait to send in your questions. If you want to text in a question, they can be having that queued up for us. So, but there is that 30-second delay. So if nobody laughs at my jokes, then wait 30 seconds. But anyway, so we'll first hear from Danny Dietz from the Navajo County Sheriff's Office. So, Officer Dietz.
Office for. During that time, I spent 3 years on patrol. Years our undercover drug task force. Last 7 years. Got into law enforcement especially when I got into the sheriff's office. What I started noticing right off the bat, trend, a lot of the crimes I would see and substance. A lot of our property, a lot of our serious crime, faults, homicide, right back. So that's what they've asked me to talk about a little bit. I've seen. I'm going to talk about a little bit. I've seen. So when I was drug task force, we served a search warrant down in Solo. It was kind of a high-risk warrant, so we had SWAT with us. Their job was to go in and clear the house and make sure we were safe. So SWAT goes in, their thing, the house. Immediately they start opening. And as they're opening windows, I'm catching the whiff of marijuana, and it's strong. It's really strong. And when we got everything cleared and everything was secured and everything was safe for us, I saw a 2-week-old baby that was in a car seat, and that baby looked high. The parents had been smoking marijuana inside the house, and here's all this commotion. All these guys in combat gear or SWAT gear, and they are doing all this stuff, all this loud stuff, and you think a 2-week-old baby would be screaming. And that baby was not. That baby was calm, and it had a glazed look over its face. And it looked high. I immediately called my wife, and I said, thank you for being the person that you are. Because what I saw was somebody who was addicted to a substance that had no regard for their child, that was using that substance inside the house to the point that the child was being affected. Those are just some of the things that I've seen in communities. Like I said, I've seen homicides that are either because the person was high on meth or because there's a drug deal that's gone bad. I've seen burglaries where they're stealing stuff to try and take care of their habit. Because what's going on in their brain is, I have to have my drug. I have to have this or I'm going to die. That's the message that their body is sending, or their brain is sending to their body, because they're addicted to it. As I've gone on in my career, what I've started to see, or what we were told in 2012, was that because of prescription drug abuse, that we would see a huge increase in heroin. Heroin had kind of gone by the wayside, and meth was the more popular drug of choice. And now with prescription drugs, they said it's cheaper to buy heroin. So you guys are going to see a huge increase in heroin. And that's what we've started to see even in our community. We've started to see big increases in heroin sales at the street level. We're starting to see more heroin being transported across the interstate. Last year, or 2018, I assisted HSI, Homeland Security, with the investigation. We seized 7 pounds of heroin. But with that, now what we've started to see is fentanyl. How many of you guys have heard of fentanyl? You guys know what fentanyl is? Fentanyl is a narcotic drug. It's similar to morphine or some of the things that you would get in the hospital. And it can actually be used in the hospital to treat pain. It's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And if you've ever had morphine, morphine's pretty powerful stuff. As small as a granule of fentanyl will kill you, can kill you potentially. What we've started to see now is that the cartels, knowing that the demand for it is high, are starting to make counterfeit, what we call M30 pills, the oxycodone pills. Have you guys seen those? The blue pills you get from the doctor? They're starting to counterfeit those, and they're actually fentanyl. It's actually made its way to Navajo County now. In Winslow alone, I think in the last 3 months, we've had 4 or 5 overdoses, 1 death. We've had overdoses down south.
She took that now.
That passed away.
The reason that I want to bring that to your attention is because you guys
reason that I want to bring that to your attention is because
you've heard that from the marijuana.
Just say no, just say no. You've heard that from the marijuana, the meth.
What we're starting to see is that kids are taking your
we're
parents'
starting to
pills,
see is that
taking
kids
their
are
brothers or sisters
taking their parents'
grandma's
pills,
pills.
taking their
When you go to the
brothers or
doctor,
sisters' pills or their
you're
grandma's
given-
pills. When you go to the doctor and you're given a prescription, that prescription is measured out and tailored for your body. That's why you hear doctors and law enforcement and everybody else say, if it's not prescribed to you, don't take it. When we get into the more serious drugs like the oxycodone, like the hydrocodone, like fentanyl, you are playing with fire. Because if it's not prescribed for you, you could potentially overdose. Now, we do have things out there that can help you, that can bring you out of an overdose. And that'll be talked about later on, the naloxone and things like that. But what you got to remember is that how many of you guys know how long your brain can go without oxygen? Close. 4 minutes. How many of you know what the average response time for Holbrook EMS to get here is? About 20, 30 minutes, depending on if there's an ambulance available. If all the ambulances are out in Winslow because they've gotten a bunch of calls, you're looking at almost an hour. Now, we do have the fire department that can respond. But again, 4 minutes. 4 minutes if you've been discovered. If you haven't been, you could potentially die. We're starting to see this uptick, and that's the reason we want to educate you guys. If it's not prescribed to you, don't take it. If you're getting it off the street, don't take it because you don't know what it is. If you mix it with the wrong stuff, if you mix a heavy narcotic with something like alcohol, it'll stop your heart. It'll slow everything down because you're mixing 2 depressants together. Now, that all sounds like doom and gloom, and I don't want it to sound that way. But those are the facts. That's what I'm seeing as a police officer. If you are in possession of an oxycodone, let's say that Avery, I get an oxycodone from you, and I get caught with that oxycodone, and I don't have a prescription that says this is Danny's oxycodone, I can be charged with possession of a narcotic drug, which is the same legally as being in possession of cocaine or of heroin. So there's some serious ramifications that can come your way if you end up going that route. And that's what we're starting to see a lot of out on the street is with prescription drug abuse. We're starting to see our kids are getting a hold of it. As parents, that's where we can step in and protect our kids, talk to them. If we're starting to see a problem there, step in and talk to them. If you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling that anxiety, there are ways to handle that don't involve substance abuse. When people get addicted, what I have found in my career is that they're trying to numb some kind of pain. There's some kind of emotional pain. Maybe they've gone to the doctor and been prescribed it and now they're addicted to it. You guys have resources. Your parents are more than willing to step in and help you out. We have resources at the county that can help you out. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing out in the law enforcement side of things. And if I can help just one of you to not do those things, then I've succeeded. Because you guys have no idea how many lives each one of you individually will impact. So play it safe. If it's not yours, don't take it. And if you're struggling, get help. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Linda Wilson, the Chief Deputy Probation Officer for Navajo County Probation.
That works. Okay, so my name is Linda Wilson, and I've been with the probation department for about 13 years. Before that, I worked with dogs. I was actually a dog trainer, and my specialty was aggression. So in about 2007, when my husband and I moved up here full-time, I thought, why don't I switch to kids? They bite less, but they do bite, some of them. So what I wanted to talk to you about tonight is the legal, physiological, and real-life impact that drugs have on you, your family, and the community. Some of the most commonly used drugs, you've all heard of tobacco, nicotine, right? What you may not know is that recently it was signed into law that you have to now be 21 to purchase any tobacco or vaping products. So energy drinks, that's on my list as well, and we'll go more into detail about that because energy drinks are not illegal, but they are tied to some other things that I think it's important to share. Alcohol, marijuana, spice, and K2, which is artificial marijuana, meth, heroin, as Officer Dietz talked about, and over-the-counter and prescription drugs. So the status offenses are the lowest level of offenses that we deal with in probation. These are things that are only against the law because you're not 18 yet or 21 in the case of products like alcohol. When you're caught with tobacco, you'll come to see one of us probably in probation, and we'll have you sign a diversion contract if you admit that you had something in possession that you weren't supposed to have. If you don't admit, then you get to go to court. But with diversion for a first or second offense, we can give you some community service, have you write an apology letter if you stole it from a store, let's say, and were accused of shoplifting also, and you would pay a fine, and then you're essentially diverted from the court system. You don't have a juvenile record. So when you get older and you want to join the military and they call us up and say, hey, so-and-so just signed up, do you have anything on them in the way of a delinquent record? We'll look and say, we see a diversion there, but no, you don't have a delinquent record. So that's a real valuable opportunity for those that have no criminal history to start with. Sometimes counseling is needed. And that leads into my next topic, which is energy drinks. Now, all you guys have had energy drinks, right? Monsters, Red Bull, all of those, and they come in the real flashy cans. Right now, it's about an $80 billion a year business, and that has tripled every year since 2010. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be next year. But what you may not know about it is in 2010, the World Health Organization put that on a list of things that you really need to look out for. It is a health problem. It's pharmaceutical grade caffeine, and they also include guarana, which is an ingredient that's on the NCAA's banned substance list. The reason I bring up energy drinks is, let's say I've got a kid that just got put on probation. He and mom are sitting in my office. He's got his big thing of Monster in front of him and he's drinking it. Hey, how's school going? School's going good. What else is going on? Well, I can't sleep at night. I've got ADHD. I have all this anxiety. And I'm like, caffeine, hello, you know. So here's a kid that may be in counseling for other behaviors and he also can't sit still. We might want to watch the consumption of energy drinks. They are linked to seizures, convulsions, and sudden death. And from 2010 to 2013, those are the most recent stats I could find, they accounted for 42% of all poison control cases across the United States. So next is alcohol, and this falls in with the status offenses, like you've heard of minor consumption, right? That's if you're not 21 and you get caught having alcohol. That'll usually go through justice court unless you are also doing a delinquent offense. A delinquent offense is one that's guilty for everyone, no matter what age you are. If you're 15 and you shoplift, it's delinquent. If you're 25 and you shoplift, it's criminal, but yeah, the words are different. It's still the same thing. So if you commit a delinquent and a status offense like minor consumption, you get to go to justice court and or superior court. The fines, even if you're a kid for a DUI, is upwards of $5,000. So you always hear, don't drink and drive. Seriously, don't. Not only can you end up having to spend a lot of money, but you could end up hurting yourself or someone else. In the recent years, you've heard a lot of people talk about marijuana because now it's legal in the state of Arizona for people who have a medical marijuana card. I don't believe there's any kids that have cards in Navajo County, although I do understand for certain conditions they can get one. There are things that you need to know about marijuana, whether you are allowed to have it or not. In probation, we consider ourselves to be in the information business where we're trying to get you to be 18, healthy, no physical or medical problems to speak of that are going to get in the way of your behaviors so that you go out and commit more crimes. It's all related. With marijuana, when it's your age especially, it damages your emotion regulator. So if you're using when you're 15, 16 years old and you use pretty regularly until you're an adult, you'll find that you have a lot harder time controlling your emotions for the rest of your life. It also can cause schizophrenia, and that there's a link. They don't know if it's cause-effect or if you already have the schizophrenic symptoms and you're going to use marijuana to try to feel better. I have a lot of kids tell me, I'm going to use marijuana because it's legal, right? It's from nature. I mean, it's not legal, it's from nature. It's good for you. It's natural. And I'm like, well, that may be, but there's a lot of other things that are from nature. The things that they make fentanyl with are also from nature, and that is definitely not good for you. So marijuana, depending on how it's charged, can be a misdemeanor or a felony. A misdemeanor is a low-level crime like a traffic ticket, whereas a felony has enhanced consequences that I'll go over with you guys in a minute. But felonies will close doors permanently, and it's still something that you want to avoid at your age. So back to marijuana and schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a mental disorder that causes psychosis, delusions, hallucinations. People hear voices, they see things that aren't there. It tends to get worse as you get older. So again, heavy marijuana users that start when they're 15 or even 20 and continue to use until they're over 30 or throughout their life, they have the highest risk of developing schizophrenia, even if they don't have a family component. No one else in the family has had it, they get it. So the link to mental illness with marijuana is not something to be taken lightly. I don't think any of you would recognize this young man in this picture or in this one, but he was a promising student. He was going to Pima Community College in Tucson, well liked by his friends and his peers. He was a regular marijuana user. One day he packed a bag and he went to a grocery store in Tucson where Senator Gabby Giffords was speaking. This is Jared Lee Loughner. The link of his marijuana use is well documented before he developed mental illness and then acted out in a way that affected lots of people forever. And there's another case too that's well documented. This one happened in Colorado. This is the guy, James Holmes, who did the Batman Theater shooting. He was a psychoneuroimmunology student, try to get that out, at the University of Colorado, and very bright, very capable young man, but he had a link to marijuana and schizophrenia. So whether the marijuana caused it or he sought use of marijuana to help himself feel better is what we're not clear on, but he did use. Now I have lots of kids tell me nobody ever died from using marijuana, but there is this thing called collateral crimes. Here's a fellow who was fine, and about 11 years ago he was high. He crashed the family car into a pole and injured his head. So now part of his brain is missing, and there's a link to when you have part of your prefrontal cortex removed, you're not going to have the same personality. Now he can still talk. He's very articulate. He has a YouTube channel. I don't recommend listening to it because every other word is not one that you want to repeat in public. But his name is Carlos Haffey Rodriguez. And since his accident 10 years ago, he has been in and out of the courts twice, once in 2016 and once in 2019. He set his mattress on fire in the duplex. It caught the duplex on fire, forced the neighbors out from the smoke. Twice he's done this, so he's been written up for arson and attempted murder, both. But he's still out on the street, so what do you do? Spice, I'm not going to go over a whole lot because this is something that we were seeing a lot of in Navajo County in 2011, 2012. This was when people were buying it because they still wanted to test clean for their UAs, the urinalysis tests on probation. So they were using Spice, which is a synthetic marijuana. But it doesn't treat, your body doesn't react the same way to it. It can cause permanent brain damage in a way that marijuana, I mean, schizophrenia is one thing, but we had a fellow in Show Low a few years ago who was high on Spice. There's a condominium complex there called the Pines. Well, he ran out and grabbed the handyman guy who was with the shovel trying to plant some things. He grabs this guy and starts trying to take bites out of his arms, saying, but I'm a zombie, I need to eat, I'm hungry. And the guy's whacking him with the shovel, trying to get him off. They got him off, and when he woke up in jail the next day, he didn't know what had happened, and that was not his personality at all. But meth is one that we're not seeing quite as much of. It went on an uptick, now it's going back down, and as Officer Dietz said, we're seeing a lot more of the heroin and the fentanyl products because they're cheaper and more readily available. But this just shows you how meth can change a person's appearance in just 2.5 years of use. That's the time lapse from when this woman started to when she was arrested and this picture was taken. The reason it's so hard on your body is that it's made from things like rat poison and brake fluid and mothballs. So the toxic ingredients are one part of why it does permanent brain damage, but it will destroy what we call dopamine receptors. And these are the things in your brain that the feel-good hormones interact with. So when you're happy, you laugh, your dopamine's high, your brain's feeling it, you're just having a really good day. You can get that from exercise, music, lots of things. Laughing with your friends. I hear some video games are a lot of fun. My kids tell me that. But it will, if you use meth, it makes that like flood your brain so that it kind of burns out, and you'll end up losing your sense of smell, losing your sense of taste forever. I had a fellow some years back that came to meet when I was at Holbrook Junior High School as the school resource officer. We had cookies, and he talked about his history with probation. And he's eating the cookies, telling the kids, yeah, it tastes like eating a sock. I have no sense of taste. I can't taste anything. This guy wasn't 30 years old yet. So it is a Class 4 felony, which has the enhanced consequences that we'll go over again in a minute. Heroin, like Officer Dietz mentioned, is a real problem here. It's extremely addictive. If you use it one time and it doesn't kill you, you could be addicted after that one use. We see people lose weight on heroin. A lot of them will start taking it for that reason because they think this is a good way to get skinny quick. That's true, but it's also a good way to get yourself to the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections or the Arizona Department of Corrections because our treatment options for this type of drug are very limited locally. We do a lot, and I'm really glad to see that we've got Gretchen from Change Point. We work a lot with them through probation, but some of these substances require a lot more than what you can get just at home and in the community. So the over-the-counter drugs, that's continuing to be an issue, mostly the cold medicine. Have you guys heard of triple C's? That's where kids buy like a combination of cold medicines and cough syrups, and they'll take those. Well, when you take more than the recommended dose, it's going to cause pain, seizures, possibly death. That in itself is bad enough, but a lot of kids who are smart enough and brave enough to ask for help, if they're having depression, they're feeling suicidal, they get put on an antidepressant, right? Well, antidepressants and dextromethorphan, which is the main ingredient in cough syrups, don't work well together. What happens is your brain center that absorbs the dopamine, that feel-good chemical, shuts down and doesn't work properly, and you end up having lightheadedness, seizures, or possibly death. So again, no good comes from taking stuff that's not prescribed for you or not in the dosage that it's been prescribed, that's recommended. And thankfully, we're not seeing farm parties so much anymore. There's used to be back in 2010 and 11 more, we'd see kids go to a party. Your admission was to dump a bottle of pills in a bowl. And then around the party, everybody would take the pretty red ones or whichever ones they thought they wanted to have. Not a good idea. You're taking stuff that isn't prescribed for you, and it's not going to work well with the other stuff. Try to get the technology here. So back to the consequences. This is where probation comes in. You may be convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony. Misdemeanor marijuana actually can close doors still because a lot of prospective employers, even though it's legal for some with medical marijuana cards, it's still against the law federally. And a lot of companies still drug test. And so if you drop dirty for marijuana, they're not going to hire you. If you get convicted of a felony, which any drug possession charge in Arizona is a felony, unless the county attorney amends it, that's what it's going to be on your record, then you can't get student loans. You can't get scholarships. If your family receives any sort of government assistance, you're not going to get that either. If you want to have a license to do anything in the state of Arizona, whether it's selling cars, real estate, cosmetology, auto mechanics, anything that you need a license for, you're not going to get it unless you try to get your record expunged. Because in Arizona, you turn 18, it doesn't just go away. It's still there. People can still call and check. The best way to deal with that, we always advise people go through legal aid or find an attorney. Don't get any trouble between now and the time you're 25, and then you can go through them to see if the court will then expunge your record. They may not, but you have to try. So you have to wait until you're 25 before that can happen. So we get back to prevention. Hopefully you guys can hear this. Uh-oh, no sound. How do I make it start this slide over? Let's try that. Auto mechanics and license for you're not going to get it unless I don't know how to make it. I know that voice. Deal with that. We always advise people go through legal aid or find an attorney. May not, but you have to try.
Oh, the YouTube still going?
I have such a bad effect on machines.
I like it. When you work.
Thank you.
And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that no, it's never going to stop.
You have a nail in your head.
And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail.
See, you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
I can just like literally feel it,
Sometimes
and it's
it's
relentless.
like there's this achy. I don't know what it is. None of us listen very well at all. None of the sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Really hard. Are you sure? Got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix
Ow!
Come on, if you would just.
Don't.
Maybe the nail.
it. You always do this. You always try to fix things. Sometimes
Prevention. It's not about the nail. Okay. It is really is about this impairment. Opens up the nail.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Gretchen Herndon, the Program Director for ChangePoint.
Right. Where's it at? They told me it was somewhere. I don't know. Oh, wait. I think I found it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. And she said she had issues with machines. The computer actually ate this presentation. My IT department had to like work for a few days to get it back. So, so literally, that is an excuse now. I will tell you guys that. So they asked me to talk about just factors leading up to use and behavioral health challenges or behavioral changes with this. I could actually talk about this for like a full hour on just even more topics, treatment, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't bore you with all of that. So I decided just to stay focused on the topic. So the first question that I have is, why do people use? Why do you guys think people use? Sorry, I used to be a teacher, so I interact. Go ahead. That is actually my first point. Good job. Did you see my presentation beforehand? It is actually because they want to feel good. Okay? How many of you guys like to feel good? Okay. How many of you guys have ever felt really sad or depressed or like you just couldn't handle things for the day? Okay. I think everybody experiences that, including adults. And guess what? Sometimes people turn to substances to help them feel good, to help them get through the day. Okay. What's another reason you think people might use drugs?
Friends are doing
Okay,
Sorry.
friends are doing shouting it out. Friends are doing it. Yes, and that's my last one. So I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, what were you going to say? Okay, so let me go through these. Unless anybody else has something. Yeah.
Self-medication.
Self-medication. Yep, absolutely. So to feel better, to do better. One thing that I've heard of is kids asking for Ritalin or another stimulant. They say, I have ADHD. It actually speeds up their system if they don't have ADHD, and so they can work longer and harder. And you hear this, like, especially in colleges and stuff where they're trying to compete for things like med school and stuff like that. People will actually use stimulants to try to do better, do more, be more active. Even high school and junior high students will use that as well. The curiosity and the social pressure. How many have ever been told by their friends, just do it? Oh yes, it is out there. Even for adults, for the adults in the audience, have you guys ever had that happen to you? Even as an adult? Come on, just do this. It'll help. Wow, the adults are saying no. That's good. That's good. So some risk factors for substance use. So there's a lot of pieces to this. There's the family history of addiction. Like Officer Dietz, right? Talked about. He said that the child was exposed to the substances. If kids are growing up seeing that, do you think it's more likely they're going to use? Absolutely. That's what they know, that's the norm. Plus, there is also the genetic factor. Some people argue that, but there is actually proof that there is genetics, and they've done this study with adopted children where the parents used substances, but the kids were moved on the day of birth, and they ended up using substances. So there is some studies that they've been done with this. Mental health disorders. People may have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and so they start using to cope and manage those. So that self-medication that you guys talked about. Again, the peer pressure. You guys know a leader versus a follower. Yeah? Okay. A lot of times those followers will follow the leader if the leader's doing it. So, and you want to be cool with your friends. Who wants to look good with their friends? I do. Or at least I did when I was a teenager. I don't care now, but lack of family involvement. So those families where you don't see the parents at parent-teacher conferences, where you don't see them involved in activities, they maybe have a lot more freedom to go out, spend time with friends. Those are going to be the ones that are using. The earlier you start, the harder it is to stop. and the easier it is to fall into those traps. And I'm going to tell you, when I say early use, I have adults that come in and tell me they started using when they were 8. So I am not talking like, oh, 13, 14. I'm talking 8 years old. So think about it in the elementary schools. Drugs are there. Taking a highly addictive drug such as opiates, stimulants, and benzos. And I know they've talked a lot about the opiates. That's like the painkillers. How many of you guys have ever been prescribed something because you broke an arm or broke a bone? Oh, yeah, we have one over here in a cast. So you guys want to try to limit the use of those. And I am not joking on this. People can become addicted like that to those. And like the 2 other presenters have said, we are seeing more of that. At ChangePoint, we have a program called Suboxone, which is a way to kind of wean people off of it. But it is very DEA regulated. So the Drug Enforcement Agency really regulates that, and they have to follow specific rules. And I'm going to tell you, these are your neighbors, these are your friends, these are people that are working that are addicted. Okay? These are not the people that you see on the streets that look like druggies. These are people you know. And they are coming in for help for this. My dad had broke his back a couple years ago. He broke the bottom vertebrae. And he's in his 70s. And I was like, okay. So the doctor gave him some pain meds. Okay, once. Then another prescription he went in for. Then a third one. I called that doctor and I said, you stop that. That is how serious it is. My dad was kind of mad, but I don't care. And just so you know, the medication they talk about that they can give you within minutes, I actually carry that in my purse. So at work, if we have somebody there, we have it in all of our offices. Well, not all of our offices. We have it in the front office, and we have it in the nurse's office. We have it at various points in our building. So risk versus protective factors. So some risk factors: if you have early aggressive behavior, lack of parental supervision, substance use, drug availability, and poverty. Those tend to be risk factors, but there's also protective factors because, you know, not everybody that falls in those categories will become substance abusers. Okay? So do they have the ability to gain some self-control? At a younger age, if they do have early aggression, can they learn to manage their behaviors and gain that self-control? If the lack of parental supervision changes to parental monitoring, let's say the parents get some help and get some parenting help, and then they start paying attention to the children. That's an example of that. Substance abuse. Are they doing well in school? What are their grades like? Drug availability. Are there anti-drug policies? Are they responses to drugs? Then you have the poverty. Instead of, even if they don't have the strong parental supervision, do they have those strong community attachments? Are they going to youth groups? Are they participating in healthy activities? Are they part of sports teams? So all of those things can actually help protect children from starting to use drugs. So the role of genetics. Basically, there's the psychological and environmental factors. There's the genetic factors. These will, so you start with the psychological and environmental factors, then the genetic factors kind of are the ones that push you into that substance abuse. So you may be toying with it, you may be giving into those peer pressures, but then if you have those genetics, it actually will push you the rest of the way in to substance use. But some drugs, again, nicotine, heroin, they're so addictive, anyone can become addicted. Those opiates, the painkillers. So one of my favorite topics is drugs in the brain. You guys ever studied this? It's very interesting. So They kind of talked about how drugs alter brain activity. So they've talked a little bit about dopamine. And so basically what your brain does, they, like when you're happy, it shoots out this dopamine and there's these receptors over here and they catch them. Most drugs will block those or stop the use of those receptors. Like with meth, they'll actually start blocking them. But what meth does is also produces more, but then you need more and more to get the same high because these receptors are being blocked. So you're not receiving that chemical message of, oh, you are really happy. And so it really does change who you are, and it does so permanently. This does not change back. So it takes on the same significance as survival behaviors. So you need it more than you need food, more than you need water. You need whatever drug you're using. So it becomes like just this really strong desire, and you don't even care about anything else. You don't care about family. You stop caring about friends. You stop caring about whatever's important in your life. And so brain changes can interfere with the ability to think clearly, make good judgments, control behavior, and feel normal without drugs. A lot of people who use drugs actually get caught doing other crimes. Sometimes they'll get caught with drugs, but they maybe get caught stealing. They maybe get caught assaulting somebody else. It's not usually for the drugs, but then they test positive, and so then they get to come see us for the drug stuff. And the cravings become the most important thing in life, and urges become strong enough to rationalize or minimize use. So this is one of my favorite things to do is look at brain studies. This is so fun. So on this side is the normal brain for these different substances. And the red means that the dopamine receptors are really working strongly. And you'll notice when you're using those substances, those dopamine receptors decrease. And when we diagnose people, I know they talked about how marijuana can lead to schizophrenia. I've seen alcohol leading to schizophrenia. I had an alcoholic, he was in his 50s, and he developed schizophrenia later in life, which is a rare age to develop it, but it had to have come from his alcohol use. So when we diagnose people, we can diagnose them with alcohol-induced psychosis. So some signs of addiction for parents and even for kids to watch for in their friends. Now, there are signs for each specific one. I'm just doing some general ones. So you may want to look up some of the resources that we're putting in there. But there's behavioral signs and then there's physical signs. So some of the behavioral signs, what do you guys think some of those might be? Aggression, yes.
Personality change.
Exactly. Anything else? Constant fidgeting, irritability, depression, absolutely. Anything else? Okay, you guys basically made a good list. So increased aggression and irritability, changes in attitude or personality. They may be sleeping more than usual or less than usual sometimes too. Depression. Some of their messages may change on social media. That's something you see a lot with kids. Dramatic changes in habits and or priorities. Involvement in criminal activities. They maybe start to hang out with the wrong crowd and they begin to break the rules. So what do you guys think are some of the physical signs? Weight loss. Oh yes, the pupils. That's a giveaway. They may look older. Even alcohol can do that. Lack of motivation, absolutely. Anything else? Okay. So bloodshot or glazed eyes, dilated or constricted pupils, abrupt weight changes, problems sleeping or sleeping too much, looking unkempt, poor physical coordination, unusual body odors. And here's some resources for you. This is a ton of resources. Great stuff on all of these websites. So a lot of them break down substances specifically. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Our concluding speaker will be Vicki Solomon, the Executive Director of the Nexus Coalition for Drug Prevention. And just a reminder, you can start texting your questions, as after Ms. Solomon's presentation, we'll do our question and answer period.
You tell I love public speaking. I just ran up there without an introduction. I don't love public speaking. So I do want to start off with, have you guys ever played that little game, Two Truths and a Lie? Okay, I'm going to tell you 3 things about myself, and I'm going to see how good you guys are. I'm going to tell you 2 truths, and I'm going to tell you a lie. You have to guess what it is. Okay, the first one is I love doing crafty things. It's like a stress relief. I just sit down, do the crafty things. I love it, okay? The second thing is I love going 4-wheeler riding, getting on that 4-wheeler, taking off, stress relief, okay? And the third thing is I love to watch the UFC fights, the ultimate fighting, okay? So those are the 3 things. Which one do you think is the lie? When the very, very back, what do you think? What? The number 3, what was the number 3 I said? The fights. Nope. That one's a truth. Right here. Which one's a lie? The second one, what did I say that was second? The 4-wheeler riding, that's the truth. I love going 4-wheeler riding. So what was the lie? The crafts. I can't do crafts. It stresses me out right now. So, but maybe one of these days I'll be able to do that. All right, so I just wanted to kind of loosen you up just a little bit. You guys have got some heavy information, a heavy topic, and I appreciate you guys sitting here, and it's great to see you. So I work with Nexus Coalition. I have some great people that I work with. Brenda Willis, she's a program coordinator. Sylvia Turley was just a recently hired person, and then Debbie works in the office, and she keeps us on our toes. So I'm very thankful for them. All right, so what we do is we work with the community, the 12 different sectors in the community, and we try to partner with them. And the 2 main goals that we exist, number 1 is to reduce substance abuse among youth. That's the number 1 goal. And the number 2 goal is to establish and strengthen collaboration among community organizations. And I love doing both of those things. Those are my favorites.
Nexus Coalition for Drug.
We're going to skip that. So I wanted to just show you real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to show you some of the things that we've done and what we do, okay? In 2019, we went to 86 meetings, 199 hours. Those were probably all mine. About 1,770 people that we rubbed shoulders with, 174 activities. I love this one, Reach of the Youth. So we touched base and gave education to over 5,320 youth, 1,857 adults. We've got some volunteer hours then. Now, if you look right here in naloxone distribution, and we're going to talk a little bit about naloxone a little bit later, but we had about 223 for the whole year. My goal this year is to do at least 50 a month. I want to do a little bit more, and I'll tell you why later. We have drug testing kits that are free that we distribute, brochures, 1968, and then media. We do a ton of media. We try to get the word out, and so that's just a little quick shot about what we do, okay? Now, this is what I love. So have you ever heard of ACEs? Adverse Childhood Experiences, okay? And most everybody, if you're human and breathing, we all have a little bit of ACEs trauma, okay? There's something, maybe events that happen throughout your life, but the ACEs that they're talking about are really traumatizing to youth, and we're trying to get the word about ACEs. We'll have lots of trainings on ACEs, and so we'll send the message around so you can learn more about ACEs. But what we have done inside of our prevention program is we have kind of layered it with the knowledge of ACEs. When we go to teach these kiddos, we have to be mindful of them, because if I'm talking to them about not doing drugs and alcohol, but then they go home and guess what's happening in their house is drugs and alcohol. Maybe they don't have a mom, maybe they don't have a dad, Maybe maybe they're living with foster care. We don't know what the situation is, so I try to be very careful. So what we want to do is we want to help youth build resilience. What do you think resilience means? When you hear that word, resistance, yes, I like that. Resilience is trying to help, yes. Yes, the toughness, right? So let me ask you real quick, all of the adults in the audience, right? So you guys are grown now, you're adults, you're 18 and over, no more stress, right? Raise your hand if you have no stress and you're an adult. Did you raise your hand? Okay. Guess what, guys? Stress will never go away. So we have to learn how to deal with stress, right? We have to build resilience. And so that's what we do in our program is we try to teach kiddos how to do that. We're not going to go through the mindfulness. We teach mindfulness as well. Okay, I want you to really pay attention to this because this right here blows my mind. If I wasn't in the prevention field, I wouldn't know this, okay? This is Navajo County numbers, right? This is 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. And these are lifetime totals. This comes from the Arizona Youth Survey in 2018. Alcohol for 8th graders, 23%, 50 for 10th, 56.8%. That's how many kiddos are drinking alcohol. 46.5 in marijuana. E-cigarettes is 46.4 in 12th grade. Okay, those numbers are really, really high. And we want to try to get into the schools and we want to try to educate so we can get these numbers lower. And we want to educate our parents. And we want to have our parents be teaching the youth about these things so that we can get those numbers down. That's our goal. The reason why is because some of those things on there, somebody might say, e-cigarettes aren't that bad. Well, have you ever heard of popcorn lung? Have you ever seen a double lung transplant on a 16-year-old kid? Okay, e-cigarettes are that bad. Vaping is that bad, right? Okay, but the other thing that it is, have you ever heard of a gateway drug? What a gateway drug is, it opens the gate to where, oh, I'm just going to do e-cigarettes. Well, I'm going to do e-cigarettes and I'm going to drink. I'm going to do e-cigarettes, I'm going to drink, I'm going to try some of these pills. I'm going to do e-cigarettes, I'm going to drink, I'm going to try some of these pills. I'm going to go to heroin. That's not strong enough for me. I'm gonna probably end up with some fentanyl in my system. Okay, that little vaping problem opens the gate to all of these more severe things that are killing our youth today. All right, so it's very important. Now, whenever you leave, I brought some handouts. I probably don't have enough for every single person, but I'll get some more somewhere, and maybe you can get your hands on it. But this is things that you can do to help all these problems that all of us are talking to you about. I hate going to meetings and hearing all this horrible stuff and then being left, well, what am I supposed to be doing, right? So here's your little guide, what you can do. And one of them is, there's 4 things. Provide information on the dangers of fentanyl and the use of other illicit drugs. So when you learn something, tell somebody else about it, okay? Number 2, ensure access to naloxone. We're going to watch a video on naloxone in a minute. And I have free naloxone for anybody that wants it. I'll leave my card up there and you can ask me for that. Track what's happening in your community, okay? If you're not involved in your community and you don't know what's going on, then it's going to be really hard to help problems that are going on in your community. And then the 4th one, I love this one. Stop addiction at the medicine cabinet. What do you think that means? Stop addiction at the medicine cabinet? At your medicine cabinet? What does it sound like that means? What do you think it means? Right. Don't go to your medicine cabinet unless you have permission, right? So here's another reason. Here's another thing is your medicine cabinet, if there's old or unused, get rid of it. You don't need it in there, right? And so your local police departments, they have a little drug drop box that you can dispose of that properly, all right? And if you don't have access to that, then you put it in a Ziploc baggie with kitty litter or coffee grounds or something yucky, and then you put it in your garbage and it'll be properly disposed of, okay? We need to get those unused and expired medicines out of our home, because people, whenever when they become addicted, they will do anything to get to that medicine, okay? And you think, well, not my kid. My kid's a good kid, right? We have a lot of good kids that are addicted. And some of those straight A students that have a lot of pressure to get those straight A's, then they're going to be turning to drugs and alcohol. And they may be doing that right now that we're not aware of that, okay? It can happen to anybody. So let's get those medicines out of our home, and that'll be our little prevention that we can do. So free naloxone, I have a little video. It's only 3 minutes, I promise, and it's really super good. And it teaches you a lot about what naloxone does. But these ladies back here in the back did a fantastic job of explaining how your brain works, and this naloxone will tell you what it does to your brain whenever they do overdose, okay? So what happens is, if you have somebody that has overdosed on an opioid and they're laying down and they're dead and they're not breathing, okay? If you shoot them with naloxone, within a couple of minutes, they'll probably wake up. And if they don't wake up after 2 minutes, you shoot them with another injection of naloxone, and then hopefully they'll wake up. And a lot of these overdoses, and Dietz probably has seen this a lot in the field, they have saved people. That's the reason why there hasn't been a death attached to some of these opioid overdoses, is because they had naloxone and they saved the life, okay? Now here's something I think about. Is there any grandmas or grandpas in the audience? Okay, there's a few of us, right? So if I have my 5-year-old grandson at my house, and my husband and I had knee surgery, and I still have some pain medicine left over because I didn't use it all, right? And it's in my medicine cabinet. He happens to somehow get that pain medicine, and he takes it, and I walk in there, and he's dead on the ground. I live in Taylor, and it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to the hospital. Do I have 30 minutes? I don't have 30 minutes. You heard Dietz tell us that I don't have 30 minutes, right? So what I can do is, in my emergency kit at home, I grab the naloxone, I inject Liam with that naloxone, and he wakes up, and he might be sick, he might be pukey, but he's breathing. Now I have 30 minutes to take him to the hospital and get the help that he needs. Why would I not want naloxone in my home in my emergency kit, okay? Right now, the government has flooded us with free naloxone, and while I can still get it free, I want to give it to every person, 110, 112,000 people in Navajo County. I think we all should have one in our home, okay? Let's watch the reason why. Oh, and 80% of overdoses happen in your home. That's a big number.
Opioid overdose. Parents and children, friends and neighbors. But naloxone can help. Naloxone is a safe and effective rescue medication that reverses the effects of opioids and saves lives. To understand how naloxone can stop and reverse the effects of an opioid overdose, it's helpful to see how opioids work in the body. Opioids are agonists. This means they bind to and activate specific receptors in the body, including the brain, brainstem, and spinal cord. When these receptors are activated, people experience the effects produced by opioids, such as pain relief, euphoria, calmness, relaxation, and slow breathing. Taking too many opioids causes so many receptors to fill and activate that breathing may become dangerously slow and even stop. This is how an opioid overdose happens, and this is where naloxone can help. Naloxone has a strong affinity to opioid receptors, more so than most prescription opioids and heroin. But unlike opioids, naloxone is an antagonist. This means it attaches to opioid receptors without activating them. So when naloxone is administered during an overdose, it knocks the opioids responsible out of the way and allows breathing to normalize. Naloxone can be administered through an injection or a nasal spray. It usually starts working within a few minutes and lasts from 30 to 90 minutes. While one dose of naloxone can reverse an overdose, sometimes multiple doses are needed, especially in cases involving extremely potent opioids like fentanyl or opioids that stay in the body longer than naloxone. Naloxone is very safe in single or multiple doses. It may produce withdrawal symptoms in people with opioid dependence, but it has no abuse potential and cannot cause an overdose. It's important to remember that naloxone is opioid specific. It has no effect on an overdose caused solely by non-opioid substances like benzodiazepines or alcohol. At the same time, people shouldn't be afraid to use naloxone when the cause of an overdose is unknown. If opioids were not involved in an overdose, it won't cause any harm. If opioids were involved, naloxone can save a life.
Potent opioids like fentanyl or opioids that stay in the body longer than naloxone.
First, you gotta first, like that circle bigger, you gotta first in your school and your community. So let's just spread that word. Drug problem.
All right. Well, thank you. And we've been fortunate to hear from our wonderful speakers, and now we'll proceed to the question and answer time. So if you want to text in a question, or if anyone here in our studio audience would like to ask a question, we have a microphone that will circulate around, and so be thinking of a good question. I think there's one in the back. So while we're getting the mic, the first question that has come in from our texting is, can I test my child for drugs without them knowing? That sounds like an Officer Dietz question to me.
I don't deal with the testing side so much. When I test you, you know it.
Oh.
So you're generally getting stuck with a needle. So I would probably defer to these ladies here.
I don't mind commenting on this. What I would like to hear is I want parents and youth to be talking to each other. And so rather than saying, I want to do it behind their back and not let them know, you need to have a frank conversation with them sitting down. And I've got some resources that can help you know what to say. But it almost breaks my heart to hear that, because we don't want to go behind kids' back. We want that conversation to be upfront and honest, and that's the best way to do it. And if you suspect it, get a drug testing kit. If you can't get it from me free, you can go to the Walmart or wherever, but have a drug testing kit at your home so that your kids know that they can be drug tested at any time. And if a parent suspects something, listen to your gut, because parents' guts are usually accurate.
Thank you.
We do quite a lot of drug testing in our line of work. We can test saliva, we can test urine, but again, as Vicki said, it would really work. I mean, communication is one of the issues that leads to substance use. So if there's a way for them to have a conversation about it, or if the parent is truly concerned, get someone else that's close to the youth to talk to them about it. I don't know how we could test them without their knowing at our end, but parents can even have a blood draw if they really want to find out that way.
Thank you.
Got one other thing to add to that.
Go ahead.
Connection is key. You know, if it's gotten to a point where we do have a substance abuse problem, any addiction, and both of you ladies both mentioned this, in order to heal from that addiction, there's got to be connection. And so I just echo what you guys said, is talk to them. It may be an uncomfortable conversation for both of you, but ultimately that's what's going to get it addressed.
And for youth, my recommendation, and I tell this to all the youth that I meet with, is if you can't talk to your parents, find somebody that you can talk to that's a grown-up that you trust, like whether it's a teacher, a spiritual leader, whoever. That is so important.
I was curious where locations are to dispose of drugs in our county.
You bet. So at most every police station, there is a box to dispose in. We are working on 3 more additional boxes. We haven't got them pinpointed to the location of them yet. On my website, ncdp.rocks, it has a list of locations that are throughout Navajo County.
There is one in the Holbrook Sheriff's Office as well in the lobby.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Our next question here says, what should I do if I see drugs in my friend's?
Be a snitch.
Mm-hmm. Be a good friend.
Well, and don't hang out with them. I mean, honestly, and I tell kids this all the time, when they're on probation, we tell them don't hang out with other kids who are on probation or who are thinking about being on probation, because when law enforcement comes, they're going to write up everyone who's there, and they don't need to be, I mean, you need to be a good friend and have them tell someone, or you tell someone, but you really need to kind of keep your distance. I know that's hard because you want to be a friend to your friend, but you also have to be aware of what can happen to you.
But you can save a life if you tell.
Right.
And I know it's hard. Like we talk about it with suicide in my profession. You need to tell somebody. The same is true with drugs. Go to the school counselor, go to your parents, whoever.
And
Go ahead.
I would say, what if we did the same thing the same comment that I said with your parents? Have a conversation with your friend. You know, talk to them about that and express your knowledge that you know about how harmful drugs and alcohol are and how addictive they are and where that could lead them. And if you care about your friend enough and your friend is a true friend, you may be able to save them just with a conversation.
I was going to say the same thing. Speak up, talk to them, let them know, hey, I'm not cool with that kind of stuff. Talk to them about it, but if they're going to continue to use and say, you know, I can't hang around you because I don't want to get in trouble.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so audience, you guys be thinking of some good questions here. I'm going to go back to the monitor here. At what age should I be talking to my kids about drugs?
All ages, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we saw a lot of the statistics up here. Kids using as low as 8th grade, I would say even in elementary school. The earlier you can start talking about it, the more ingrained it is, so that when they are presented with that situation of potentially being propositioned to use drugs, they've already got it in their mind that, no, I'm not going to do that. So I would say as early as they can start comprehending it.
So the Arizona Youth Survey tells us that the initiation age in Navajo County is 12 years old. So what that means is a 12-year-old is going to be approached to do drugs and alcohol. If you haven't been talking to that youth early on, I talk to my 4-year-old grandkids about drugs and alcohol. I don't think that there is an early enough time.
I just remember they have Ribbon Week in Holbrook, and my son came home from 1st grade. He's now 12. And he was telling us how, you know, everything is a drug. And then we went to the fair, and he was like, he saw people drinking alcohol, and he's like, they're doing drugs, or they were smoking a cigarette. They're doing drugs. And we had to converse to him about how, like, there's a legal age for that, and there's time and place for that. But we started that conversation when he was young, and he knows.
We're seeing as young as 9 and 10 in some of the cases. So yeah, it's never too early.
Thank you. All right, next question. Are there places in Navajo County to go for drug addiction treatment?
Yeah, at Change Point, we have that. We're starting a youth one in Holbrook. We haven't had the numbers yet. Thank you, Jill. Yeah, so we're going to start that. We have it for adults as well. In Holbrook, we actually have 2 groups with about 15 people in each one. And it depends what they're seeking treatment for. So, like, if it is for the opiates, we do have a Suboxone program. Right now, we're having to run it out of our DEA facility, which is at our hospital in Pine Top. So people are having to travel up there, or we're taking them up there. They're trying to work on getting all of the Change Point sites DEA approved to do Suboxone out of. We have several doctors that are.
What is Suboxone?
Suboxone is basically an alternative. It's a way to get off of opiates. It is an opiate itself, but it works differently than the painkillers. And basically, it's a little strip. It's the best way to put it. And you put it on your tongue. And there's actually 2 ways to do it. Methadone, which I have not found to be the best way. People tend to then become addicted to methadone, which is another opiate. But Suboxone, they can give it to you in lower doses, and it's easier to lower the dose and wean you off of it.
Probation does have drug court for the adults, and that has been an effective tool in giving people the opportunity to go through an intensive bout of probation counseling, and then when they graduate from the program, their charges are no longer.
And one thing we look at, just to add to that, when we first initially meet with and throughout treatment of people with substance abuse, a lot of times there's some sort of trauma involved. And so we try to treat the trauma as well through individual therapy. And we find that people with a lot of family support and just a lot of supports even from friends, that is the best benefit for them. Some people, their families have turned them away, and it makes it harder for them to recover.
So in Show Low, there is a Blue Base Recovery, but it's for 18 years and older, and it's a long-term 6-month program for people with substance use disorder. I'm so glad to hear that you guys are getting youth, because that's been a gap in Navajo County. We haven't had any place for youth. Also, there's a location that has recently opened in the last 2 months, Community Medical Services with Chris Lambert. You can also look that up and contact him, and it's another medicated assisted treatment facility, and they're doing some great work as well.
Next question. Is there a place I can find a job if I've been an addict?
There are places that will hire. What I always tell the kids, and adults too, this is true, is to be honest on your applications. And it's possible that some employers will not want to converse with you further after that. But then again, there's a lot of people too who are older and have been through problems, and they find value in people that are just honest about it. Letters of recommendation help. Community connections, again, are key.
And we have a VOC program where we refer to RSA, which is a state-run VOC program to help people find employment. There's also, the county has the at-work program that has resources as well to help people that need to find employment who have had drug addiction or criminal charges.
All right, any questions from our audience here?
So I have a statement and then a question. Where I work, if an individual turns themselves in, my company will do everything that they can to help that person get back to where they need to be. But if we're caught, then that's the end of our career. So I would like to hear both sides of that. If someone has the courage to come and seek for help, what can you do for them? Or if someone is caught doing whatever, what are the ramifications of that?
So For the sheriff's office, especially when it comes to substance abuse, there are things that can be done to help the employee. We have what's called the Employee Assistance Program. It's completely anonymous. And if we have an employee that's struggling with something like that, they can get help through that that actually doesn't even notify the employer. There are certain guidelines that govern police officers. And I was actually going to bring this up with the employment thing. If you have ever used certain kinds of drugs, Arizona Post, which is the governing body that governs police officers, will revoke your certification. Other substances, it becomes a little bit more lenient, but most employers will try to get you whatever help you need when you come forward and say, hey, I'm struggling with alcohol abuse or drug abuse, that most of them will help you out. I know that I know of one agency in particular, and I'm pretty sure it would be this way with my agency too, that if you are caught, you'll be terminated immediately. So for police officers, it's a little stricter because of the governing rules that the state has in place.
Absolutely.
That is true.
I know in my business, I don't need that. I'm so loud. Okay, in my business, our we have a bunch of installers that are throughout several different states, and we did have a young man recently tell us, "Hey, I have a problem. I didn't realize it was a problem. I'm drinking, blah blah blah. I need to get rid of this." And we actually let him, go get it done, whatever. We supported him. We checked on him. And about 6 months later, he came back and said, I'm ready. And we brought him on open arms. Love this guy. He's a great guy. I can trust him. I have a couple of guys that I think this is going on, and I'm just waiting to see if I can catch them because they'll be gone. I can't have somebody in a home, doing our business and not know for sure what's going there, what's going on in there. So, like Neil said, we're really supportive, Mr. or Deputy Dietz, we're really supportive of taking care of anybody that comes forward honestly and says, I need help. We'll do anything we can as our business. But if you're lying and cheating and we can't get a finger on what's going on, we're going to do everything in our power to figure it out. And then you'll probably be without your job. So,
Kudos.
And we've had several people come in who have gone to their employers and who have said, hey, I have a substance abuse problem. Some of them we have sent to rehab. Some of them have just completed outpatient treatment. One individual that I was working with, I was required to sign a paper every time she came in for treatment. And I had to send monthly reports, so we had to do what we call a release of information to the employer, but we limited to just the signature saying that she had come in for treatment and the monthly report with the dates that she had come, so they could verify both of those pieces of information, and that monthly report would go directly to the employer, not through the person that was seeking help.
Kudos to your business for doing that. That's fantastic.
All right, our next question. How are people in Navajo County getting fentanyl? Maybe you don't need to be specific.
There's this guy on the corner.
We're seeing that a lot through the illegal drug sales. To kind of keep it brief, the fentanyl is being imported from Mexico, from the cartels. From there, it goes to what you call source cities. For us, it's the Phoenix area. From there, local people that have connections down in Phoenix can go down there and purchase it, and then it gets distributed to your lower level dealers and so on and so forth. So that's why I stressed that first of all, if it's not prescribed, you don't take it. Second of all, it's highly dangerous to purchase it off of the street because what I don't think we talked about is fentanyl is transdermal. And what that means is that it can be absorbed through the skin, kind of like similar to heroin. That means you can get the same effects from having it in your hand that you can from ingesting it. And so that's why we are stressing so heavily that, if it's not in a bottle and it's not yours, don't mess with it, because it could be potentially deadly in that way.
Our law enforcement are doing a fantastic job. We've got this I-40, and if they have a ton of drug busts, and it's amazing. I was keeping up on all of them, but there was just so many of them. It was crazy how much they were taken off of our streets, but we still have it in our streets as well. So that I-40 doesn't help us.
Other questions or?
I tend to be a bit more curious, but you said it can come in through your skin. How does that happen? I mean, even if you just touch it, does it have to go through the blood system, or is it just
It's absorbed through the skin.
into the blood system, or just?
So there's certain
Touch marijuana, you're not going to get high on marijuana. Certain opiates.
going to get high on marijuana, but certain opiates can be absorbed through the skin and get into the bloodstream and then cause the same effect. Very.
Oh, there's one.
You mentioned in the workplace when you kind of come forward, there's systems in place for kind of treatment and help. As a youth, if you come forward to say law enforcement or even your parents and they refer you, would you get that felony or those charges on your record, or is it kind of more lenient because you're taking action about it?
So are you talking about like if I catch you with it, or like you come to me and say, hey, I'm struggling?
I come to you and say I'm struggling.
If you come to me and say you're struggling, and I think most law enforcement would be that way, we would try to get you the help that you need. It's, if I catch you with it, that's a different story. But there are systems in place beyond, let's say that I do catch you with it, there are systems in place beyond that to get you the help that you need. And a lot of the courts are moving more towards that. We're getting more towards treatment and less towards incarceration.
That's why we have diversion. If a juvenile is written up for having, let's say they've got a marijuana pipe or they've got some weed at school, that's normally a felony because you've got it on school and it's marijuana or drug paraphernalia. But we do have, through the county attorney's office, an agreement where if it's a first offense or a second offense, we can offer a diversion program and get counseling for you to try to get you through it. And if you complete the counseling and you don't get in any more trouble and you do your community service, then you will have been diverted from the system, so you still won't have a record.
And just about every call that I've ever dealt with where somebody was coming forward, they're wanting to get rid of it, they're wanting to get help, we're more going to just take it for destruction and try to refer you to the place that you need to get the help you need.
So, how do you know if the substance that say if you see it at the store or if it's just somebody selling something, how do you know if that drug is a bad drug or if it's just Motrin? How do you know the difference?
So most of your pills are going to have a number or some sort of imprint on them. Those pills can then be, you can look what that imprint is supposed to mean, but like I said before, I've participated in cases where we thought we were purchasing oxycodones, which are labeled M30. When we sent those off to the lab, however, they came back fentanyl. So that's why we're stressing, if you're buying it from over the counter at the store, your doctor has prescribed it to you, that is the safest way to get it. If you're buying it on the street, you don't know what you're getting. It could be Motrin, it could be fentanyl, it could be oxycodone. And then the wrong dosage unit could potentially cause some negative effects.
And with our drug prevention program, what we teach the youth, if you're under 18 years old, don't take medicine without somebody knowing about it. An adult needs to be getting the medicine for you, and you'll know that it's safe. They're not going to give you drugs off of the street. So make sure that you're taking medicine with a trusted adult.
The school nurse isn't here, so I think I'll answer what the school policy is that you have your prescriptions in the actual bottle, and you have to have the school, you have to fill out a form to take a prescription drug at school. You should probably not ask your friends for an ibuprofen or an aspirin. You should go to the office where they have it in the original container. So at school, be really careful too.
Okay, well, I think that that our time has come to an end here, and thank you, members of the audience, for being here and participating with us. And if we could, I'd like to give our speakers one last thank you for coming. And I'm sure they'll be around for a few minutes to answer any individual questions, but thank you all for coming, and drive home safely tonight.